We can be proud of the great care that people get in Sheffield. Most of it's taking place in practices and in the community, but when people need specialist care, getting referred to the hospital. Now, this system served us really well whilst the flow of people going from one to the other has been manageable. But as the population gets older and more medical advances are made, the number of people being referred from primary care to secondary care, that's from practices to hospitals, has been growing and growing. And both sides of the system are starting to bear under the strain. At the same time, we've seen a sort of chasm develop between hospitals and practices, because both sides are just too busy to be able to talk to each other and make proper joined-up care. So what we want to do in Sheffield is build a bridge across this chasm called CASES, and it's a way of making care that connects GPs and specialists and all the different health workers, so that we have a system that bridges the gulf, gets us working in a joined-up fashion and in a sustainable way for the future. This is how we think things are working right now for patients in the NHS. So this is Sarah, and she's got some problems, so she's going to go and see her GP to find out what can be done about them. She sees the GP, who takes a history and maybe examines her, and says, yeah, I think there may be a problem here, but I need you to go home and come back again and have some blood tests, and maybe go to the hospital and have a special test like an ECG, and then go home again and come and see me when we've got the results. So she does all those things and she comes back to the GP, who says, well, yeah, I think there is a problem here and I need some help with this. So I'm going to write a letter to the hospital, and can you wait at home until you hear about the appointment? So Sarah waits until she gets an appointment and goes to the hospital, where she sees one of the doctors or nurses who agrees that there's a problem and that it perhaps needs some further tests. So she goes back home and waits for another appointment to have some more tests at the hospital. And then she goes back to see the consultant, who says, yeah, I think there is a problem, but I think we've got an idea about how to manage this. So I'd like you to go home and wait for my letter to reach your GP. And then I'd like you to go back and see your GP to talk about it. So Sarah goes back to see her GP, who says, yeah, I think we've got the answer to your problem, and the consultant's given me some information about how we can manage this. So Sarah's had a number of journeys to and from hospital to get to that point. For all we know, she may have had to arrange childcare or take time off work or rely on her children to make her able to get to the hospital and back. This is how we think things could be better. So here's Sarah again, and she's got the same problem. So she goes to see her GP, and her GP takes a history and maybe does an examination and says, well, Sarah, I think we need to do 1 or 2 tests, but have them done here and then go home. So she has a couple of blood tests and maybe an ECG or some other investigation at the practice at the time and goes home. And what the GP said to her is, I'm going to ask the question of CASES about what is the best thing to find out the answer to your question. So the GP will send a message to CASES, and that's where the assessment takes place. So somebody who's got a lot of experience in looking after Sarah's type of problem will have a look and say, well, I think the best thing to do is maybe to have some community-based investigations, or maybe to see a specialist nurse or even a consultant at a community clinic to work out what the answer to the problem is. What the GP will get is some advice and guidance about what to do next. And the great thing about that is that every time that GP is getting that message back, it's reminding the GP about how to solve the problem the same way the next time. And it may be at the end of it all, what Sarah needs is some support from another agency in the community It might be a charity or some other third sector organisation. So when the GP's got the plan and the answer, he'll get in touch with Sarah, maybe even by phone, and say, I think the next step is this. I've been advised that there's this service or this special investigation that you can get. And so Sarah can get that with as few visits to different services as possible. But in the end, if what she really needs is some world-class treatment in a hospital setting, then that's the answer to the question, and she gets there with as little trouble as possible.